Welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
Cool. That was a nightmare. So we've officially hit our finale of our Alien month. It is time to wrap this whole shit up. I am incredibly relieved. This has been a long month. Like, I was not prepared for the mental toll that this was going to take on me.
God has come to reap the sinners. We're opening up the Ark of Alien Covenant.
Ha, ha, ha. Ha, ha, ha.
Get it? It's a reference to Jesus, like it happens in Alien Covenant. It's high art, Sean. You just don't get it.
It's totally not a movie that's just wallowing in its own self-aggrandizement and loving everything it's doing. And I have lots of thoughts about this movie. I'm gonna try and temper them a little bit. If you follow me on Twitter or keep up with the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you know that I basically lost my shit on this one. There's one still in particular that we will talk about down the road that really killed it for me. It did a lot of mental damage. And I'm gonna talk about that. But as I said, I kind of want to temper this a little bit. Like, I don't want to just be totally reactionary because I've had time to think on it, and like I don't feel as instantly angry anymore. I'm still pretty viscerally upset about it, but I think I have a more rounded explanation as to why. And like, even before we get into that, I will say there was a lot of this movie that was actually pretty good. There were a lot of really interesting shots. There were some cool ideas in it. There was some stuff in it that I genuinely really liked. It's just too bad that it's bookended by some very bad movie.
Alien Covenant. Upon the rewatch, upon the revisit, I have basically the same reaction to it that I had when I first walked out of the theater, and that reaction is this. When it's doing stuff that I like it a lot. When it's doing stuff that I like it more than Prometheus. When it's doing stuff that I probably like it more than Alien 3, which I am also an apologist for. When it's doing stuff that I don't like, it is bad. It is not good. It's more clear to me than ever now that, you know, in the process of creating Prometheus, Ridley Scott made it an Alien prequel, then made it not an Alien prequel, then made it kind of an Alien prequel. And this is much more explicitly an Alien prequel. It's obviously in the name. And the movie would have been a lot better if both it and Prometheus were more allowed to be a sci-fi sort of thing, because it does have some very interesting characters and concepts. And I think the reason I say I like it more than Prometheus is I think those concepts are elaborated on and explained and a little more coherent than they were last time. But those concepts are just weighed down by so much franchise baggage, and it gets tiresome, and even undermines a lot of the points that the new movie is trying to make. It feels like this was one problem that Prometheus didn't really have, in that, like, there was never a moment where it felt like the themes of the original Alien movie and the themes of the new Alien movie were in any way clashing. In this one, they butt heads a lot more directly in kind of subtle ways that are disappointing, because it's easy to see why someone who's a big fan and very much invested in Alien would be mad at a lot of the surface stuff in this. But I think a lot of that anger towards the surface elements is getting at something deeper that's kind of going on with regards to, like, theme and character and just the overall Alien mythos. So I don't know. I think even I kind of found Prometheus and Alien 3 to be like mixed bags of like high and low points in a lot of ways, but this like those were way more consistent than this in comparison even. This is maybe one of the most inconsistent movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's wild. As I said, like there's probably 45 minutes in the middle that's actually an interesting movie, but it's just bookended by 45 minutes in the beginning of basically doesn't need to be there, and then 30 minutes at the end, which makes me viscerally mad. So it's a weird thing. And like I really like Prometheus. I'm one of the biggest Prometheus apologists out there. I absolutely adored that movie. And I think the part of the reason I liked it so much is because it felt more incidental in the world of Alien. Like the things that were happening tie into the universe as a whole, but weren't like shaping future events. It felt very much like this is how things just happen to happen. Whereas Covenant feels much more like a direct attachment to the franchise. And it feels like a franchise in that moment. Because like Prometheus never really felt like it was it tied down to the idea of the alien mythos. It was doing new weird things all over the place. There were, horrors that did not exist before this movie. But every horror in Covenant has been done before. It's all in service of the great Lord Xenomorph. Copyright trademark.
I mean, I think this is hardly a spoiler considering the title and the fact that it's a sequel to Prometheus, but like there's no beating around the bush. This is a movie that's about the creation of the Xenomorph. They actually went and did it, the Mad Lads. Whereas, and you're right, and that and I think it's worth mentioning that the recycled ideas aren't just, the already incredibly stale use of the alien life cycle, the horror of the alien, because in retrospect, the Requiem notwithstanding, the original Alien versus Predator was probably the best thing they could have done with either of those franchises, because at that point, the horror and trauma metaphor of the original Alien is completely gone. It's just another franchise movie monster, and the Predator was always schlock. So why not? We know that both creatures kind of have very specific rules.
Put them in the dark universe.
Pretty much. Why not have them fight? And it was cool, and it was fun, and I liked that movie a lot. And now
we have some very weird alien tastes.
I feel like everyone has very weird alien taste, though. I feel like this is a very divided fandom. I feel like no one can agree on anything except that the original Alien is a masterpiece.
That's because they're all so wildly different from each other.
They're so wildly different and yet so the same, which is it's crazy.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I mean, that's just the big problem. So not only do we have like them trying to recycle the horror of the Xenomorph again, which they can't. I mean, they just can't. And then they have,
which is why you introduced new horrors like in Prometheus.
But then they just brought the black goo back.
Yeah, right. They can't leave good enough alone in this movie.
No, which is like Ridley Scott. I guess while we're still talking about generalities, we talked a little bit about Ridley Scott as a director last time, but after watching this again, more than ever, it's convinced me that Ridley Scott's the kind of director who's very talented, who has like vision and a real eye for like cinematography and is great at creating a mood. But his sense of story is not really there. And that's not to say that he's like an idiot or a bad director or anything. Far from it. But I think that he needs the right writer and the right sort of team in order to make his style really shine into like a cohesive whole. I
mean, that's not a shameful thing at all. Like, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses.
No, and if anything, like that's kind of the role of the director, right? Is to bring in like all these artisans and craftsmen and writers and, you know, production people and whoever into something cohesive. And so when Ridley Scott is at his best, he's made some damn great movies. But I think when you put him in charge of the story department and give him a lot more influence over that, as he so clearly did in, you know, both of these movies, and like, even, I don't know who the writer of this was, but it feels like there's got to be more Ridley Scott coming through here, because I feel like if there was ever, you know, Damon Lindelof was the writer on Prometheus, and he is known for a very particular style too, and like, you can definitely see it in that movie.
So this movie was written by Jack Paglin and Michael Green. Jack Paglin is known for Transcendence, which is a Johnny Depp science fiction movie that came out in 2014.
I remember hearing about that. That was not, by all accounts, a good movie at all.
And then Michael Green is a writer on a lot of things I actually really like. He wrote the screenplay for Logan. He wrote the screenplay for Blade Runner 2049. He's doing work on the American Gods TV series. He's apparently a writer on the Y TV series, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Whoa.
I don't know what to take from this at all.
Some damn fine pedigree on that one guy. Shit. Yeah, huh.
He also did the screenplay for Green Lantern. So, like, I don't know what to take of it. Like, at all.
That's really interesting. But I feel like it... Like, the only reason that I'm so confident in saying that Ridley Scott had so much more of an input on the story, on at least, like, these two were so much more clearly, like, pushed as kind of Ridley Scott productions, is the fact that he's spoken so much more about, like, the universe and, like, the questions opened up by these movies, and particularly the one that in their video on Alien Covenant that they did, Red Letter Media mentioned that Ridley Scott apparently gave an answer for why the engineers were so mad at us and wanted to kill us with the black goo, and the answer was that Jesus was an engineer and they were mad that we killed him.
That is insane to me. And like, it ties in with what he's trying to do with these prequels, kind of. Cause like, the first movie was more about meeting God. But like, it didn't really have as many religious overtones to it. Like, it wasn't as overtly religious. Like, meeting your creator, I feel like, is something that is existence within most of us. Like, if you have the opportunity, if you have like this innate curiosity, I feel like even if you are not necessarily a religious person, if you're like, hey, this asshole made you, do you want to say hi? You kind of have that faint urge to. Like, I'm not saying like seek him out. I'm talking like he is in the room next to you type of thing.
Prometheus had a lot more of that feeling of like when there's a character who has like a dad that they've never met, and then they meet him and like have the chance to ask why they like ducked out on him. Like, that's what Prometheus feels more like, I think. Yeah,
and Covenant is much more like, it gets in the weeds with religion. We'll get to that.
And so like that, you know, the engineer being Jesus thing, like, I feel like that's so indicative of like the rest of the movie, because that's such a batshit crazy, like, out there idea that I kind of love. But also, it's nuts and not narratively coherent, and that's just these movies.
That's
particularly
like
this one.
Fucking Hideo Kojima style idea.
That's like, I mean, that's literally like, if we want to talk about like mad auteurs, Hirohiko Araki, author of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, did something similar. The plot of JoJo Part 7 is that they're having a horse race across the continent, and they're trying to collect the pieces of Jesus's body to unlock the ultimate stand. It's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really in that vein, so I kind of love it, but it's not exactly...
It's not Alien. Like, that's the whole thing, is like JoJo and Metal Gear and like that type of wild auteur stuff is all very much like, they have a setup where their universes are kind of wild already. Like, it is not like to them to say, oh yeah, we're having a horse race to put Jesus back together. I'm like, that sounds buck wild, but right on brand. Yeah, I'm into it. I get it. I understand it. Or, had Hideo Kojima been like, and here's Liquid God, I'd been like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But yes.
Liquid God. Oh no. Okay. All right.
But then you give Ridley Scott the ability to say that, and like he has created this universe based around a metaphor for trauma, and like that shit don't fly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just when you kept talking about Liquid God being a metaphor for trauma. Oh Jesus. Okay. I mean, you're absolutely right though, and that's the sort of thing that's crazy about Alien is that the franchise, like one of the things that we specifically commented on and like that everyone loves about the original Alien is how grounded it is, how much of like it not only does it like feel plausible and that like space is vast and horrific and there could be something terrifying that we can't comprehend, but like the characters are all working class schlubs. They're space truckers, and they're kind of under the boot heels of middle management and capitalism and the literal robot that's sent to like oversee them and make sure they're being productive. And then you get to here and you have Alien Jesus, and that's great, but also makes me more firm in my convictions that like you should have just let Ridley Scott go make his mad creation story, and it probably would have turned out both more interesting like and just like conventionally better.
Like, honest to God, Prometheus was a fine place to end an Alien prequel.
Yeah. No, I mean, like we saw kind of that's so weird. It's so weird that they did this because like everyone comments that on this too, that like that was so, since we already know that the alien sort of integrates the DNA of its host, like you kind of got the sense that the thing that was created, like the proto-xenomorph at the end when the squid like swallowed the engineer, you got the sense that was like the engineer xenomorph, and like, that kind of was the bookend. That's kind of all we needed. So it's baffling that like they couldn't leave well enough alone, and they decided they need a movie about the specific creation of the specific like egg to face hugger they skipped the chest burster. Now it's just a little tiny alien, and that's hilarious.
Yeah. But like even beyond that, like the whole like we've talked about how like they're creating aliens in this movie, and like that's not really a spoiler either. Like there's not really a whole lot we can spoil up until towards like the end. But like it really flies in the face of Prometheus, which is much more of a movie about like the random happenstance that creates the alien in the first place. Like I won't go into all the details on it because that is spoilers, but basically all you need to know is it bounces across several different species before it ends up where it kind of ends up. So like to then just be like, nah, but you know what? In this time they made it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is, like, that's a good point in that, like, it's such a different approach, because, like, what we see in Prometheus is not at all incompatible with the idea of, like, something dark and terrifying that we don't understand in the universe out there. But light spoiler, I suppose, I think we're starting to brush up on the limit of what we can say here.
Yeah, let's just dive into it at this point.
The last thing I'll say that is, again, kind of a light spoiler is that we find out that the alien, the xenomorph, is something that was specifically engineered, which is something that pisses off a lot of people because it flies in the face of, kind of being the unknowable horror in a way that, like you say, the presentation of the, like, chaos in Prometheus doesn't really.
And I mean, even then, it still is an unknowable horror in Prometheus because, like, the origins are still quite the mystery.
Yes. But now I think it's time to get more detailed.
How do we want to begin this?
I mean, I guess like I want to talk about David first because I think
Okay.
he's the strongest character in both of these movies. All of the good stuff in this movie relates to him. I think that like of the thematic threads going from Prometheus to this, like David is the one who feels the most like a natural continuation of what was going on because he's got so many great moments, even if they are wild, like him showing up in like a space wizard Obi-Wan Kenobi robe and him like being literally liquid like Fassbender to Walter.
Too fast,
to Bender. Like the infamous like all do the fingering scene where like he gets all homoerotic and kisses his clone brother cousin robot.
I just talk about that scene for a hot second before we move on?
Yes.
Because like that scene more than like when I was watching it, I wasn't even like, I'm like, oh, this is really homoerotic. I was more getting like, this is really masturbatory. Because like, it didn't feel like it was really doing anything. It felt much more like, hey, look at what we can do. We can have Michael Fassbender play with himself. And it's, it's such a weird thing. Listen, the masturbation jokes write themselves.
You seize the moment. You didn't let that one go.
Grabbed it by the shaft, let it ride.
I will say this on the second watch. That scene felt a lot less pretentious and out of context, in the context of like thinking of David as someone who is post-human and someone who is trying to get like his brethren to see his point of view. Like it's a seduction that's being presented in a very literal way.
No, I got it. I get what they're doing with it. It's just more than anything, I think it's the setup of the shot, where it's just a constant pan back and forth between the two of them with like unbroken takes and whatnot. That felt, as I said, it just felt very much like, look what we did because we could. Like, there are ways to do it, and like, I don't really necessarily have a great idea on an alternative to it, but like, I just think it's because they just had this unbroken shot of just the two of them playing with this flute. It felt it lost the magic of the movie to me and felt more like, look what we can do because of movie magic.
I see. So more like a very show-offy thing, like a long, like kind of like that, like big long one take at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith that isn't actually impressive because it's all a CGI computer battle scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel that. I don't know. I mean, I was into it.
Hey, more power to you.
Because those are all my favorite moments in the movie, is like those conversations, that seduction, and also like so, and again, like I've come to realize that for me, like robots in movies come under a lot of scrutiny just because it feels so trite at this point. Like the character is just gonna be Chappie, some variation of Chappie. And it drives me nuts and I hate it. And so I think that's why, like, for me to be praising a robot android character is some pretty hearty praise, I guess, because David is one of the few, like, android characters in recent memory who has felt like he truly has like a post-human mindset. Like he has identifiable motives, but it's hard for me until a certain point, which we'll talk about. It's hard for me to even judge him just because he's so clearly, like, you can tell that he feels so slighted by his like inferior creators, and that like the way that he sees the world is just so particular, where, you know, having this island of Dr. Moreau temple where he's just going to do his little art and his calligraphy and his science experiments is just like the way to live. And so I think he's an interesting character, and he's like a good take on the robot gone bad kind of thing. And I like that he gets I like the presence of Walter because it allows them to have this sort of discussion, and I think it's interesting that, Walter is literally programmed to be more friendly to the humans, and maybe he does feel some like genuine emotions, like maybe David has a point, like there's some nice nuance going on in their relationship and in their conversations.
Yeah, I mean, don't let me, say that the David-Walter relationship is bad. That's not what I'm getting at here. Because, I feel like the David and Walter relationship is essential to the thesis of what David is doing and the thesis of those middle 45 minutes of the movie. It just... I'm into it. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to think of how I want to put this. Because, yes, I like it. Yes, it's very good. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm glad you agree. But anyways, I mean, that's just all to say, if we're talking about death in this movie, I know a lot of people don't like this scene just because of how kind of wipe the slate clean it is, but it does feel like such an interesting character moment to me that David wipes out the engineer civilization with the black goo and kind of weeps and gets misty-eyed while he does it. And that scene is super buck wild because you have the engineer civilization, they're all dressed in Jedi robes too. You just have David raining death upon them
in the shape of a DNA helix.
Hell yeah! No,
fucking
exactly.
More goddamn Kojima shit up in this place.
But I just love that you can he feel this is him wiping out. From his point of view, this is him. He's it's literally wiping the slate clean. He's got to get ready for what he's going to do next because he sees the act of creation itself as the ultimate good. And so even though he obviously has some respect or feeling for the engineers for starting what they did, but you could tell it's kind of this case of no, you have to go because I'm going to make some xenomorphs up in here and it's going to be great.
I mean, even beyond that, I got more of an idea that he was killing the xenomorphs because they were the gods of the humans. And so to kill God, he thus becomes God himself.
Right.
Even beyond I want you to go so I can make xenomorphs. It felt much more like you are reaping what you have sowed.
Yeah. But there's still and I feel that could have been a really hokey scene, but just the way that Fassbender sort of portrays it, I like that there's that little extra nuance there. He clearly has some sort of respect for them.
Yeah, it's still just the Helix thing that kind of ruined it a little bit. There were just little things. As I said, I have pages of notes on this movie.
It's true, I've seen them.
And there's a decent chunk of them are, hey, I liked this scene. I liked the way this was shot. I liked the way this was designed. And I feel the bombing of the engineers would absolutely fall under that if they didn't do the Helix thing in it, which I feel just adds that hokiness to it that doesn't need to be there. It's an earnestly emotional scene, but it's lessened by this existence.
You know what? I cannot argue with that. I cannot make a claim in the defense of the double helix. That's kind of Hurricane Heist Skull in the clouds tier.
It really is. I mean, it's exactly that. Let's not beat around the bush.
But I guess all that's to say that yes, I like David's character. And it's clearly this idea of creation for its own sake. It's been a while since I read this, but Film Crit Hulk, when the movie came out, did a whole article about how he feels he understands Ridley Scott as a creator more because of this movie. And that obviously it seems like Ridley Scott has a fondness for David and this idea of creation for its own sake of something beautiful that only you understand. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really potent that's a really potent idea for anyone who makes this sort of art. And I can see how, like, the fact that his creation is the xenomorph would be, like, lead to some interesting implications and, like, the role of art and, like, how it can or cannot be damaging, and whether creation, like, kind of taking heed of creation for its own sake. But then we get to those last 15 minutes, like 15 to 30 minutes, and it all goes to pot, basically.
Oh my god, does the last 30 minutes go insane. I honestly, before we dive into the last 30 minutes, I'm going to kind of undo your setup here a little bit, because I kind of want to talk about the first 45 first, just because I feel like that's going to be an easier wrap-up.
It will be. The only reason I didn't mention it was just because I thought it was so unremarkable.
I mean, it totally is, but I feel like it's worth mentioning just in the context of kind of our pre-spoiler discussion, just because, like, I mentioned a lot of how, like, these middle 45 minutes with David and Walter are interesting and doing some very cool things, but, like, the first 45 minutes basically don't need to be there, and, like, it's all there in service of being an Alien movie more than being its own thing. There's just this whole scene where they go find the ship from Prometheus, which is just, continuing the cycle of Alien movies, and then they get spored, which causes them to have one back burster and one mouth burster. The back burster is ridiculous, and I can't deal with it. The mouth burster, I understand what they were going for, but is also kind of silly. Especially because these, like, white little monkey aliens just run off, and there's one that shows up later, and it's evolution. Like, the idea of it is rapid evolution, because it shows up later and it's walking upright like a human, and it's a human monkey alien. But, like, outside of that, these early moments are almost, they're pointless. Like, there's not a whole lot going on to them other than to continue, like, this is definitely an Alien movie. See, we have things bursting from people. That's what you want in an Alien movie, right? That's what you paid for. Here it is. We brought it to you. Congratulations.
You also have people slipping on blood and leading to their own deaths multiple times.
That felt like a Final Destination moment.
That was the fact that they did it. If they did it once, I would be okay with it. It's the fact that they did it twice in such short succession that made me laugh. And then she blows up the ship on accident and they both die. And it's way more. I don't know why that one didn't get memed like the rolling pin ship from Prometheus did, because that's way funnier. It's such a comedy of errors.
Especially with the little monkey alien skittering out at the end. Like, I rewound it to make sure I saw that right. Because as the ship is blowing out, you see it kind of like skitter away, like, and that it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, because I just wanted to echo what you're saying in that, like, the crew completely superficial. They have the lady from those Fantastic Beasts movies in this, and she's very obviously supposed to be like our new Ripley, and does a poor job of it. Yeah. Well, it feels a lot more like they're trying to evoke Ripley in the way that she looks. So Shaw was at least like a unique character, in that she had this fixation on creation. Like, Shaw, even though, like,
that's fair, actually, because, like, her name's Daniels. I had to look this up. I literally did not know this until right now. But Daniels is, like, more just ends up in the circumstance through the company than actually, like, actively seeking things out.
Yeah.
She has the circumstances thrust upon her. Kind of like, it's dumb.
No, so, like, they're very clearly trying to make her like the new Ripley, and it doesn't work because she, this lady ain't no Sigourney Weaver, and the writing ain't no Ripley. But so, like, all the crew, you have Danny McBride, who is way way less distracting than he has any right to be, so good on him, I guess.
He somehow managed to pull it off well enough. I thought Tennessee was a stupid character with a stupid hat, but like it was far from the most distracting thing in the movie.
Yeah, and like, so like the stuff with the crew at first, it's all just pretty droll and boring.
So, like, I actually want to talk about the crew too, actually, because this is what where my thoughts kind of first went, is that they constantly keep going like, my wife, and etc. And it felt very Aliens to me. Like, it felt very tongue-in-cheek dialogue-y.
Yes.
Which was, like, it kind of goes back to the whole idea of, like, this is just a weird, soft reboot of the trilogy. Which worked in the favor of Prometheus because it played into like tropes and whatnot to invoke a new terror. But in this one, it just feels like it's there for the sake of being there because all these characters die pretty quickly afterwards, and you don't remember any of them.
And I mean, you bring up a good point because the thing about the humor in Aliens is that it's all front loaded. Like, there's a very particular purpose to it, which is that you have these swaggering macho Marines, they're making all these jokes and just kind of like broing around, and then shit hits the fan, like 3/4 of them get decimated and they spend the rest of the movie shitting their pants and screaming, and that creates a very particular effect. Like, that is what Aliens is about. But in this, even after shit hits the fan, like when we do see the crew, like Danny McBride still quips even after his wife died, like
I dug that one of the that two of the guys on there were gay. I thought that was actually kind of cool because it wasn't like, hey, look at these guys, they're gay. They're more just like one guy shares a tender moment with his husband, and it's wonderful.
I kind of like the detail, especially like I mean, to be fair, I do think that like everyone emphasizing like that they were married was kind of a neat detail, since this is very specifically like a bunch of settlers, and so it's even nicer to me that like even in universe, like they didn't like leave the gay guys at home because they couldn't reproduce, you know?
Yeah, like it felt very nice. It was a very personal touch that I really liked.
Yeah, no, I like that moment too. I'd forgotten about it actually. I was like, "Aw,
yeah."
That's about the most emotion the crew ever elicited from me.
And it wasn't like the Disney thing where they're like, it's the first openly gay character in Beauty and the Beast, and then like there's no actual, it's not in the text at all. Like it's in the text that these two characters were married, and it's nice. It's very understated. It's just there, and I liked it a lot.
So that's the crew, and you know, again, it's all just to set up them. Really, it's all just to set up them meeting David, who either him or Walter, you could make a case that one of them is like the real important protagonist of the movie. Because maybe it's just because their relationship's the one that's interesting, which is unfortunate that it's only like a third of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But then, because I will say the only thing I do like about the monkey aliens, that kind of plays into what I was saying earlier, and kind of running off of what you said of them being like it's a stupid hokey evolution thing. Is that I really like that moment. What kind of sells me on that middle portion when David, like when the stupid bumbling church guy like shoots the monkey alien, and David like legit like screams in pain and terror, and you can genuinely tell he's got a real affection for these fucking things. That like,
it's like Michael Fassbender is a better actor than this movie deserved.
Michael Fassbender is, I feel like I've only ever seen him in like bad movies, but he's a madman. Like, he just goes all in on every single role that he has.
Like, even the bad X-Men movies he's in, he's the best part.
For sure.
I want a Michael Fassbender Magneto movie where he just hunts Nazis.
The biggest crime, side note, the biggest crime of the Assassin's Creed movie is that they didn't just have Michael Fassbender doing Assassin's Creed things, because that was only like 10 minutes of the movie, and that would have been perfect.
God.
But yeah, so Michael Fassbender's a great actor, and you really feel Like, that's, I think, what sells the post-human angle of, like, this genuine care for this horrific eldritch monstrosity. But then, on the other hand, I think that the fact that it ends up having to be a xenomorph, that it ends up having to be an alien, undermines a lot of the good themes about, like, what it is to create, like, is creation for its own sake, like, what we do, is it part of, like, art and science and whatever, like, does it all play into it? Because if he ends up creating a xenomorph, not only out of universe is creating a xenomorph not creative, because it's one of the most, like of all the movie monsters, it has very rigid rules, acid for blood, life cycle, etc. And in universe, he didn't really create anything new. He just made a variation of this xenomorph thing that already existed. So what did he really do to create? Is it that impressive, David? I'm not that impressed with your creation.
David, I will put it on the fridge, but I know you can do better. Do you want to talk about the one crew member we haven't mentioned yet?
I think you should talk about it.
Oh, no, I'm going to. I just want to make sure you're done talking about David and Walter.
No, because that's gonna, this is us. We're reflecting the structure of the movie, because I was talking about David and Walter at first, then we talked about the crew in the middle, and I'm gonna come back to them at the end. So we're, we're inverting the structure. We're very clever here. We're better creators than David.
As we have always said, if this episode feels like a mess, it's symbolic of the movie. And if we're inverting the structure, it's symbolic of what we're talking about. It's all planned in advance. Like, we're playing like 8D chess here, all right?
It's like poetry, it rhymes. Each stanza sort of rhymes with the next. Hopefully it'll work.
Hopefully it'll work. You know what doesn't work? James Franco. Ever. Like, immediate reactionary aside, like, I'm mainly joking. I don't like James Franco as an actor, but I can deal with them. The Spider-Man Raimi trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies of movies, so, like, I'm clearly not like, fuck him in literally everything. Fuck him in most things that we've ended up watching him in. He keeps coming back to haunt us. But fuck him in this, not for being James Franco, but for what he is in the movie.
I guess before you dive into, like, what's so appalling about this, like, I think James Franco in general, like, we keep running into him. He truly is like the Bowser to our Mario, the Joker to our Batman. And because the thing about James Franco is that he's not a particularly bad actor. He's not a particularly good actor, but, like, I've seen movies where he was fine. But there's something about his presence that's very distracting, and I just don't know if it's just because
he only has one face.
He does only have one face, and or like his public persona is pretty obnoxious too.
It's still just the one face.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. So Sean, get into the nitty gritty then.
So James Franco. Before we dive into this, we should mention we have not watched any of the shorts surrounding this movie. It seems like some of them might recontextualize a little bit of his role, but I feel like if you need to have that context to understand, like, this big central theme that they're trying to make in this movie, you've done something wrong. I'm going to cite Blade Runner 2049 on this one. There's a bunch of shorts surrounding Blade Runner 2049. Never watched any of them. Still thought it was the best movie of that year. So I'm not really... There's a way to do it that's correct, and then there's the way to do it like this. So James Franco dies in, like, the first 5 minutes of the movie. There's this whole neutrino flare, I believe, that wrecks part of the ship. They wake up the crew to try and fix everything. James Franco's cryopod doesn't open and for some reason catches fire. Don't know why. Laughed my ass off. I don't need to know why. It was just stupid. And he dies. Now, I didn't realize that was James Franco at first. Because when you're in those pods, it's really hard to tell who people are.
because you can only see their face and his eyes are closed.
And
so,
he
like,
doesn't have a grin on. He's asleep, so he can't be grinning.
he can't be James Franco if he doesn't have that grin. No, but I had the exact same reaction when I first saw the movie. I was like, wait, is that James Franco? Like, no, it can't be. Like, that guy died immediately. And then they played the clip of him in, like, the video, and it's like, oh, it is.
Yeah, when they start, there's a clip that his wife Daniels watches of him rock climbing, and like at one point the dude behind him almost falls off, which is just a weird little detail. And it's all strange. But then he disappears. That's it. That's all we see of him in the entire movie, except for you know what? I'm gonna say 30 frames of a still photograph. Which is of the Last Supper, and James Franco is Jesus. And this, my friends, is the image that broke me. I have legitimately spent the past day and a half trying to parse out what they were going for with this image. The religious imagery is obvious and apparent. It plays into Michael and Walter and, creation and meeting God and all that good stuff. Like, fine. If you want to do a Last Supper picture, I am good with it. Put David as Jesus or put Walter as Jesus. Like, Walter did die for the sins of man and whatnot, and it would have worked well in this. James Franco did not, and the only reason I can think of him being Jesus in this image, without the context of the shorts attached to this movie, is that he was having a little wank under the table because he got to be Jesus. And that's the best I got for you, because he did not die for our sins. He did not come back to life, and there's no other Jesus allegory to make because he never speaks a word before he dies. So that basically destroyed any goodwill I had in this movie, because it retroactively unraveled basically everything else it had set up. What was kind of a clever, interesting, as Jackson said, Isle of Dr. Moreau type thing going on here, turned into like very self-aggrandizing, just jacking it to your own brains type of thing. Like, look what we did. We made this picture that's clearly representative of all the great themes we have established. And it's not. It doesn't work. It falls on its face really fucking hard. It's just dumb. It's insane. And like, it's not even like the type of thing where there was a picture of it in the background and it was set up previously. No, it just, like, they get back on the ship and it just smash cuts to this still image as they pull out from it, and then it smash cuts to a different scene. It's clearly just, you want to talk masturbation, my dudes, it's masturbation.
And it's so clearly supposed to be some big aggrandizing statement too, because if you just wanted to emphasize that, like, Daniels is feeling loss and trauma from like losing her husband and then losing her crew members in succession, like, there are much more effective ways to do that than having James Franco dead center with a towel that looks like a robe and everyone surrounding him. Like, they could have done, like, you could evoke like the feeling of the Last Supper, like the the last day before something went wrong, if like they were like having a toast or at a party and like downing a shot, and maybe he's got his arm around Daniels because they're husband and wife, and like, you could have done something that felt a lot more genuinely human, but it sticks out like a sore thumb because it's so obviously just completely erect at the thought of having made a Jesus reference.
And like, I'm not even opposed to Jesus references in my science fiction. I am a huge fan of the new Battlestar Galactica, and their promotional image is literally the Last Supper. But you know what makes it work? It's a promotional image. It's not in the fucking thing as a still image. It's insane that they did this.
I mean, like, it's so interesting, like, talking about Jesus imagery, is that you really have to tread lightly with it, because I feel like a lot of filmmakers sort of treat Jesus imagery as, like, a go-to, like, reference to make something feel deep, but the problem with like I'm thinking of Man of Steel here, right? Like Man of Steel had Superman like drifting into space in like a crucified pose. But the thing about that is that it doesn't really work because the story of Superman doesn't relate at all to the story of Jesus when you really break down like what those stories are about in terms of like being a fable.
Wait.
And so like
Jesus didn't punch Zod in the face?
Jesus didn't punch Zod in the face. But more importantly, in this case, like obviously, like I said, like, you know, you evoke the Last Supper because it is the Last Supper. Like, you know, that kind of implies like a last hurrah. But the Last Supper implies so much more than that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just take that one element, stick James Franco in the center, and say that you've created depth. You chimps. You fools. You know, talk about evolution. You know, you're not post-human, you're subhuman.
It's insane how like they didn't think about the fact that you have to contextualize everyone else in this shot.
Is Judas supposed to be Walter in this? Because if so, that doesn't make any fucking sense.
No. A little behind the curtain action here. I was going to make a reference to the position of the apostles in relation to Jesus, but I realized I could not do that, so I went and looked it up, and I'm comparing the images. Judas is the third person over, and Judas is somebody.
Wait, is he the Christian guy? Is he the captain? Because that would almost make sense, because he's the one who decided to go follow the beacon.
Nope, he's not.
Oh, good.
No, this image falls apart really fucking fast. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, there's 15 people here, so it's not even an exact recreation. But, like, it's clearly meant to evoke the ideas of. And, like, Judas is on the left side of Jesus. And in this image, the only person I can name on the left side of Jesus Franco is Daniels, who's on the far end, nowhere near where Judas's position would be. Like, Judas would be one of these random two dudes in the middle that I can't name.
Just terrible. That's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. That said, I'm gonna talk a little bit about the remaining 30 minutes of the movie, because that is the first 30 seconds of those 30 minutes. So David escapes from the planet, the engineer homeworld, and arrives on the ship in place of Walter, and like there's this fake mystery about, is it David or is it Walter that escaped? And it was tropey and dumb, and I didn't like it.
And so obviously David.
Yeah, like it's supposed to be like this big reveal at the end, but it's not. It's not a reveal. It's stupid. So David brings the alien on board, and it gets loose. And the part I'm not gonna touch on the last section yet, because we're gonna get into some stuff with that. Before that, we get alien vision for the first time.
No, we had that in Alien 3.
Did we?
Yeah, remember there was some first-person POV shots. This is the first time they had the filter, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah. Like, I get first-person POV shots. Like, that's fine. Like, I wouldn't necessarily...
okay. So you mean specifically the filter?
Yeah, I'm not, like, that a POV shot isn't necessarily alien vision, you know?
Okay. Fair enough.
Like, that's just a POV to show the action. When you add the filter to it, it becomes clearly about alien. Like, it is clearly the view of the alien. You are supposed to be as the alien. And it is the dumbest looking thing. It honestly looks like somebody added a Premiere Pro After Effect thing to it. Because it's just like this green tint with some worms swimming around in it. And it looks terrible. It looks absolutely awful. And I don't think anybody ever asked, like, hey, let me see what the alien sees. Because it does, like, they're like, oh, it doesn't have eyes. So, like, what does it look? How does the world look around it? And no, why would you ask that? Who asked that? Who asked this? Put your hand up. Who asked this?
I'm looking at you, whoever spends their time meticulously editing the Alien wiki.
God damn it, Spencer.
Fucking Spencer, get out of here.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous and dumb, and like that's not really necessarily a huge overarching criticism. It just felt very out of place and very like it felt much more like an action movie, which like if you want me to dissect where a lot of the it falls apart for me in general is that like Ridley Scott doesn't feel like he directed about a third of these scenes because they're framed much more like action movie scenes. Early on when they're still dealing with the monkey aliens, there's a shot before the monkey alien is even revealed where it's like the camera is low to the ground and basically like skitters across the floor of the med bay. And it's the strangest thing because there's nothing that would be doing it at that time. Like that's, if you want to have like an alien first person shot, that's what you would do. Like it shows that something is in the room. There's nothing in the room, and Ridley Scott never did that before. Like, I don't understand why they did that, and then there's another shot where they have Daniels step in, like, it's a centered shot, and they have Daniels step into it from the left side, and it's just, it's wild. Like, these aren't shots that Ridley Scott would normally have in a movie. Like, he's known for much more wider, slower shots. Very, 2001-esque. It's not that. These are just some very strange shots that come out of nowhere that feel much more at home in something like Aliens, which is why I keep feeling like it's evoking Aliens more than Alien when it's trying to be this serious, deep plot that would be more of an Alien plot than an Aliens plot.
It's also strange because I'm pretty sure Ridley Scott's got a pretty... Like, I can't remember if he's ever spoken publicly about it, but like I mentioned in the Prometheus episode, like a lot of people seem to think he's got a pretty big disdain for Aliens, for taking it in a direction that he didn't like. So it is strange that he would include these elements.
Why would they have guns? No, like I don't want an in-universe answer for this. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is...
no, that's what I was about to ask. Do you want an in-universe answer or an out-of-universe answer?
In-universe answer, I get it. It's they're going to an unknown planet. They have to have protection, yada, yada, yada. What I'm asking for is why in an Alien movie that is not trying to emulate the style of Aliens, would you bring a bunch of people and have them super well armed?
Yes.
And, that is not what this story is. Like, the core of the story, the David and Walter story, is a much more introspective story than a bang-bang shooty. Also, new genre, fuck action movies, call them bang-bang shooties.
Bang-bang shooties! But if you're making an Alien movie, more to the point for me in this last part was... less the guns that was bothersome and more the fact that like the alien does some like sick jumps like onto the ship and you see it running like a velociraptor and it looks really bad and the CGI somehow looks worse than Alien Resurrection because it's doing all these like crazy flips and stuff. It looks like the Marvel movie version of an alien.
The white little monkey aliens looked terrible.
Yeah, no, they look really bad. Like almost Alien 3 level, and Alien 3's assembly cut was literally unfinished.
Yeah, wow. Oof. All right. So I do kind of want to wrap this up with some discussion of sexual assault because we have to finish it with a discussion of sexual assault because this movie brings sexual assault back into focus.
In the last 15 minutes, and this
not
is,
even
this
there's
is,
a little bit beforehand too.
Oh yeah, you're right. Well, I mean that's the even more egregious one in my opinion. But I'll talk. We'll get to that. So yeah, I lied when I said that the newer movies weren't really about that because they weren't supposed to be. But this last movie just couldn't leave well enough, and I say the last 15 minutes because it's such an obviously bloated, extended, tacked-on ending that is only there to check off alien boxes.
And it's weird because they check off more boxes than Alien usually has. All right, so yeah, full warning, we're going to talk about sexual assault again. Like, it's a weird bookending to our whole Alien thing, because we started off with the sexual assault warning, we're ending on it. So, the last 15 minutes, the alien is on the ship. And if you have listened to our Alien Month up to this point, you know that, like, my one threshold in these movies is that if there is nudity in it, I feel like it's doing a disservice to the idea of Alien. I feel like the idea of trauma and sexual assault is played without nudity just due to the kind of inherent sexualization of nudity. Actually, that's the best way I've put it, because I was struggling to explain in previous episodes why I felt that nudity would be bad. But like that really does it. Is like nudity is so sexualized within American culture that to include nudity in a movie about sexual assault and trauma feels like you are including just like gratuitous porn is too strong of a word, but like along those lines. And then promptly following it up with sexual assault imagery. Not a great look. And that's what they do in this. Literally porn, because they are two people having sex in the shower. We finally get full breasts. I really don't like how that sounds, and I'm sorry, but I'm not coming up with a better way to explain what I'm trying to say here. Female nudity, topless, that's better. And like, I'm already like, oh god, fuck. And they already said that the alien is coming, and it's in the ship, and it's going after those two who are having sex in the shower. I'm like, oh my god, you are just gonna drive this imagery home, aren't you? Like, as hard as you possibly can, just hit the nail on the head, and really kind of combine sex and sexual assault in a way that is very unpleasant. And sure enough, they do. Like, the alien tail slithers under the stall of the shower and goes up between the woman's legs.
It's a direct rip from the scene where that happens to Lambert in the original Alien, which is one of like the most uncomfortable, horrifying scenes in that movie. So to see that it's not only used in like really like the way that this scene is played, it's like a Friday the 13th movie, like to the point where I'm not sure if like Ridley Scott even realized what he was doing and just thought that like this is what happens in horror movies, like people fucking die, and and like because it's played as such a joke too, and that like it's so suddenly all serious. It's so bizarre because like up until this point the movie hasn't been that jokey. And, like, then they're like, oh, shit, like, the alien's on board. Like, where are the other crew members? And you see them in the shower, and it cuts to them, like, comically. Like, I remember people laughed in the theater when this happened. Like, it cuts them trying to, like, calm them back to the deck. But, like, they're playing the Marvin Gaye Let's Get It On music too loud, and they're fucking in the shower, and then they die. It's very, very, like, teen slasher movie.
And so goes back to the idea of just, like, undermining the whole allegory.
And it's way more insulting the fact that like they even try to do the it's like poetry it rhymes thing with that shot with the tail like slithering up, because it's such like a boneheaded like brainless execution of it. That
and honestly, here's the other thing about it too, and like I think this is what it really kind of goes back to. I'm talking about like why it doesn't work with nudity and sexual assault in this situation. Is because this kind of goes back to that whole, like, it's her fault because of what she was wearing thing. Like, in Alien, when it happens to Lambert, she's dressed like an engineer. And, like, trauma just hits, and it sucks, and it's bad. And in here, it's like, well, she was naked. What's gonna happen with the tail when she's naked? That's not okay. There's nothing about that is okay. See, this final 30 minutes is why I thought that this movie is gonna go below my rankings in the Requiem. And, like, honest to God, it might be. Like, the more I think about this scene.
Whoa, like, below the Requiem?
Just, like, the final 30 minutes is absolutely below the Requiem. Undeniably below the Requiem for me. Because I am so, like, this is up there with how livid I was getting then. Because, like, it's one of those things where the more layers I peel back, the worse it fucking gets.
I'll say this. Regarding that imagery and that sort of moment, and that there's a way to play that, because the thing about nudity is that it's also, like, this is my argument for the nudity in Alien Resurrection, and that, like, Ripley, like, covers up the clone to, like, try and give the clone some humanity and, like, make it in a less vulnerable position, because that's the other thing about nudity, is that it is when a human being is, like, at their most vulnerable, and that is a scary feeling, like, if you are being, like, watched and you are, like, in your most vulnerable states. But the framing and the context of it being in this jokey joke Friday the 13th scene is like poetry, it rhymes, replication of a genuinely horrifying moment. Absolutely the worst possible way they could have done this. Like, just 100%.
Yeah, it's a fucking nightmare. And I absolutely hate it. You wanted to talk about the other instance in this movie, which before you dive into it, I just kind of want to discuss, because I mentioned that I think this is the worst part, and you think that part's worse. I would like to kind of contextualize that by saying that I feel like this is one of those scenes that undoes a lot of respect for previous movies. Like, it feels like it flies in the face of those instances, and, like, it is a bigger affront to the Alien series as a whole, whereas your scene, I think, is shitty and bad, though more self-contained to Covenant.
So that's precisely why I actually think that one leaves a worse taste in my mouth, because the whole, like, that whole last bit, starting with, like, the stuff on the ship, right? Like I said, it feels so much like we're gonna go by the numbers, like, oh, aliens about sexual assault, oh, aliens about shooting things out of airlocks, oh, aliens about running around on a ship with no weapons. Like, it's just super compressed and really bad and really token and terrible. And so my thing about that is that, yes, it's in spirit, it like, the way that it disregards the themes and the feelings of the franchise is dumb and bad. But also, like, increasingly I'm just of the opinion that something like you know, Alien, no matter what happened in any of these, like, follow-ups of questionable quality, like, that doesn't change the fact that Alien is a masterpiece. And so for me, the fact that, like, I mean, the scene obviously makes this movie worse, but more so, I think that, like, this scene makes the movie worse in a very, like, generic sort of way. Like, it feels like some idiot's, like, executive was like, we have to put more alien stuff in this. Whereas the scene that I'm thinking of more directly contradicts the themes that it had set up in its own movie, which is why I take more issue with it, I think.
Before you dive into it just one more second, I don't necessarily think this retroactively ruins Alien or, like, any of the other movies as a result. I just think it flies in the face of, like, the idea of Alien. I'm
sure.
Like, not sitting here being like, well, now I can't watch Alien because of this. It's much more of, fuck you, fuck everything about this, fuck you.
Sure. And I didn't mean to accuse you of that.
No, but, I realize that. I'm just more clarifying in case it came across one way or the other.
Yeah, and so I guess to extra clarify for me is that, for me, like, the artistic integrity of the franchise was ruined right around Alien Resurrection. so I'm not as off put by sort of the careless handling of the franchise, because it's like, I'm a veteran at this point, I've seen it before. Right. So this scene in particular that I'm talking about is when David and Walter, David seemingly shuts down Walter, and then Daniels finds, like, Shaw's experimented body and all these plans for the alien and his experiments, and he pins her onto the ground, onto the, like, table, and, like, forces a kiss on her and makes like a little quip about like, oh, is that how you do it? And this scene I take more umbrage with, just because this is already a lazy trope, but they didn't even do the lazy trope in the way that it's finger quotes supposed to be done. So the equivalent of this lazy trope is in like that one scene in JoJo Part 1 where Dio forces a kiss on Jonathan's girlfriend to make him mad because he soiled her purity or whatever. And so that's why those scenes are shitty, is that it uses the sexual assault to like, there's no two ways about it. Like the sexual assault is just to motivate a male character. So like it might at least make a little logical sense if he had done this to try and piss Walter off, but that's not even what happens, because Walter is seemingly disposed of, so he just does it, and like for no other reason than just to terrorize Daniels in it's a very human way to terrorize somebody, but the entire appeal of David's character is that up until now he's been very post-human, very believably post-human, so that he would stoop to not only like a lazy screenwriting trope of sexual assault, but like do it in a way that like stoop to the level of being a human by committing like an act of sexual assault is it made me like shake my head. I was like, it's like you included sexual assault because you thought that's what Alien was about, and that is what it was about, but that's not what this movie's about. So you blew it. You blew what this movie was actually about.
More than that, a sexual assault was in the subtext of Alien.
Yes.
This is like, hey, here it is. Here's the giant flashing neon sign. But also, this isn't what it's actually about at all. It just is in it.
It's in it because you have to have all the alien things, which include rape, I guess.
Stay classy. Stay fucking classy.
So I mean, yeah. What more can be said about Alien Covenant than that? That nice little praise we just gave it.
So I want to wrap this up with a final little conversation, because this is the finale of Alien Month. We have officially watched all of the main Alien movies, all theatrically released Alien movies.
Well, Sean, you're wrong, because look forward to our true conclusion to Alien Month next week when we talk about Conker's Bad Fur Day for the Nintendo 64, because you fight an alien in that.
I thought I was free.
There's so many. There's the Alien versus Predator comics. There's Superman and Batman versus aliens and the Predator, where Superman lands on a kryptonite planet where the aliens are running around. There's Alien Isolation. There's the Alien versus Predator beat-em-up games. There's a whole wealth. There's tie-in novels. There's everything. Give it all to me.
Listen to the words I am saying. These are the last of the movies that were released in theaters. At least until Alien whatever, the third of the trilogy, which we'll see if that happens.
I don't know how this movie did. I know it, like, critically it has like a 66% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it was kind of like lukewarm reception, but not terrible.
I'm more curious to see if Disney will let it happen.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
But anyway, neither here nor there. My question is, let's just talk. I want rankings. I want rankings of the Alien series.
Ooh. I mean, do you want me to go first?
You know what? Yeah, sure. Start. Take us off.
Okay, so one is Alien. I think there can be no contest about that. 2, I'm still gonna put Aliens at 2. It's not as good as I remember it being, but it's 2. It's one, just too much of a fundamental like formation of my like being. Like, that was my favorite movie as like a 10-year-old. And 2, I still think it has a lot going for it. And especially in light of the whole franchise, I think that it took to the task of making a sequel to Alien in a pretty fresh approach. So after this is where it gets trickier. I think I'm gonna stand by Alien 3, at least the assembly cut, because that's what we watched.
I should mention AVP and AVPR are included.
Yes,
okay.
No, I'm aware. And so this is a close call between Alien 3 and AVP 1, because AVP is very fun, it's very entertaining, and it's
it manages
more
to be more thematically cohesive than Covenant.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah. But Alien 3, even though it's a messier movie, I still really like a lot of what it was going for theme wise. It really spoke to me. So I'd probably go Alien 3, then AVP, and now after this, I'm a little torn, because Prometheus is more consistent and more well made, but like I didn't respond as positively to the stuff in Prometheus as I did to like the 40 minutes of David and Walter relationship we got in Covenant. So despite all my criticisms of it, I think I'm gonna put Covenant next and then Prometheus, just because the stuff that I thought was strong in Covenant I thought was really strong. And then after Prometheus, Alien Resurrection is just schlock. It's funny schlock, but it's schlock. And AVPR, dead last by a significant margin. I feel like I could rewatch any of the other movies and get something out of it. I never want to see AVPR again. So those are my rankings.
All right. Obviously the first movie is the correct movie and it's Alien. Like, anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar.
Is either a liar or has too much nostalgia goggles for Aliens and has not revisited either of them in a while.
Where I get a little bit more controversial is I still think Prometheus is the second best Alien movie. But that's because I'm an aesthetic snob and it is everything I could ever want from a movie. Like, it's aesthetic as fuck and I'm just so into it. And it's also genuinely upsetting, which if you give me a good science fiction horror movie, this is a really good example of it. Following that, I have to give it to Aliens just because, like, I don't know that I was necessarily the biggest fan, but, like, I respect it, I guess, is what I can say. It was at least something that was enjoyable. Tightly after Aliens is AVP. I fucking love AVP. I genuinely really like it.
I'm kind of surprised you put Aliens over AVP.
It's kind of a toss-up for me. I think I like Aliens a little bit more than AVP. I would probably say nostalgia colors my AVP respect a little bit. You know what? No, fuck it. AVP's better than Aliens. You're right.
there we go. I knew I just needed to prod you to get the hot takes to come out.
Yeah, AVP's better than Aliens. I agree. It's better. Following Aliens, then, you get the first, like, hour and a half of Alien Covenant. Which manages to be relatively aesthetic. There's some neat stuff happening. It's not the worst thing I've ever watched. Tied following that is Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. And the reason I tie them is because I dislike them equally for exact opposite reasons. It is such a weird thing where, like, I will fluctuate, and, like, I have been thinking about Alien a lot this month, obviously. Where I will fluctuate between which one I like less on a day-to-day basis, sometimes an hour-to-hour basis. Because it'd be like, I really kind of liked how slow AVP, or Alien 3 was. Like, it was kind of cool. And I'll be like, Alien Resurrection was fun, though. So, it's honestly...
I still think about that man's hairy shoulders.
But yeah, it basically depends on what time of the day you want to ask me and what I've been doing. After that, skip a lot, you get AVPR, and then skip a lot more, you get the final half hour of Alien Covenant, which is just such a load of absolute fucking bullshit. I am mad thinking about it. Like, I can't drag the whole of Covenant down with it, but, like, the final half an hour of Alien Covenant is some of the worst filmmaking in the context of the Alien series I have ever seen.
A dishonorable mention. I gotta say, have you re-listened to the AVP episode in a while? Because I don't think I've ever seen you more mad.
I was gonna say, the AVPR ending was very infuriating to me. But the reason I think I'm less mad now than I was then is because in AVPR, that was something that I was uncovering as I was doing it. I was fully prepared to go into AVPR like just neutral. Like, I did not like it, but I was not mad about it. And I slowly dissected why I hated that movie, and it burned itself into my brain like as it was going. That said, I knew why I didn't like Alien Covenant. I came into this far more prepared. I had like a day and a half to marinate on it, so like I wasn't just like hot take out the gate type of thing. So I said in the beginning of the episode, I'm like, I'm going to be much more tempered about this. But I think it still does such a disservice to the Alien franchise, or is just bad filmmaking in the case of the Alien Vision, or makes no goddamn sense in the case of the Photograph. Like, there are 3 separate instances as to why it fucking sucks. And it's impressive how just buck wild it fucking is. So I think that's why I would put it below AVPR. Just because I actually have had time to marinate on it and like understand why I'm so mad at it.
Fair enough. Fair enough indeed.
So with that, Alien Month has come to a close. We're gonna talk about different things now.
I think this has been a very fruitful project.
No, I'm really glad we did it. I am honestly exhausted, though.
I'm a little exhausted too. I'm ready for something new.
Yeah, like we need to talk about something different. I did not think that 4 episodes on Alien would take this much of a toll on me, because like the Spider-Man episodes didn't take this much of a toll. But those are, I suppose, are very different movies, and also didn't actively hurt me on every other episode.
Yeah.
Like this has been really rough for me.
But we got Liquid God.
So yeah, I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. You can get all my hot takes, because like I go there first when I am mad at a movie. You won't get this more tepid, reassured understanding Sean, the one who has understood where everything went wrong.
The blazing fury, the pure iron heat of his heart is born on Twitter.
And if you want, I've got a website, isortof.com. I just post stuff that I work on there. Various things have been up there, including my Twitch page, if you want to go find that and come hang out and play video games with me.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me on the internet. I mean, I guess if you were really psychotic, you could dig up my, like, shitty, horrible forum posts from when I was, like, 13. Because I'm not on Twitter anymore. But I'll be back with a new project. Not as soon as I expected. There's been some snags, but rest assured that you'll know when I'm doing something new and exciting. So stay tuned.
Oh, you'll know. As always, shouts to Lords the Highway for use of our theme song. It is Suicide Alternate Take off the album High Octane Low Expectations. They're on Spotify. They got new albums out, all that good stuff. Go give them a listen, please. Support them. They're wonderful people. Also, shout outs to 25yearslatersite.com. They're hosting this whole month, and like, this is a really fucking good finale episode. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. This is some choice stuff.
You know, we talked about the masturbation of the author. Let's take a moment to jerk ourselves off, jerk each other off, pat each other on the back. We did it. We made some high quality web content.
This is good stuff. Like, it genuinely is. I think like there's some interesting discussion to be had, and like, please, if you want to have that interesting discussion with us, tweet at us at BADH_cast on Twitter. But yeah, 25yearslatersite.com. They've got a bunch of really cool people writing a bunch of really cool stuff. A lot of cult TV, horror, all that good stuff. Go check them out. Give them your clicks. Read their articles. Support them, please. Next month, we are changing pace in a major way. Well, shortly, we're going to talk about Velvet Buzzsaw first. Which it's a big change of pace, but it's another weird dark movie with like murder and stuff in it. So we'll see how much of a pace change it is, but it's not Alien. So
we know you can hear us scream because we'll be on Earth again and not in space, and that's the difference.
Fucking wallow in that. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go